Imagine sitting beside a campfire 12,000 years ago. The Ice Age is coming to an end. Mammoths still roam parts of the world. Small groups of hunter-gatherers travel across the land. They rely entirely on nature to survive. Today, we're exploring a fascinating question. When did ancient humans start smoking? The answer takes us much further back than most people imagine. For years, historians believe smoking began only a few thousand years ago. Ancient pipes discovered throughout the Americas seem to support that idea. But recent discoveries have changed everything. Scientists uncovered evidence that pushed the timeline much further into the past. The discovery happened at a site in present-day Utah. At the site, researchers found something incredibly small, just a handful of tiny tobacco seeds. At first, the seeds didn't look particularly important, but scientists decided to determine exactly how old they were. The results were astonishing. The seeds were around 12,300 years old. To understand how old that is, we need some comparison. These seeds are far older than the pyramids of Egypt. They're older than Stonehenge. They're older than most of the world's earliest civilizations. At that time, humans were still living as hunter-gatherers. The world looked very different 12,000 years ago. But there's one problem with this discovery. The seeds don't prove anyone was actually smoking. Ancient people may have used tobacco in other ways. They might have chewed it. They might have burned it in rituals. Or they may have used it as medicine. The truth is, archaeologists simply don't know. What they do know is that humans were interested in tobacco very early. And that raises another question. Why were ancient humans attracted to tobacco in the first place? To understand tobacco's appeal, we need to look at what makes the plant special. Unlike most plants, tobacco contains a powerful chemical called nicotine. Nicotine affects the human brain. Even small amounts can change how a person feels. Ancient humans would have noticed these effects quickly. Imagine discovering a plant that made you feel different. For ancient people, that would have been remarkable. Throughout history, humans have searched for ways to alter their state of mind. Tobacco may have become one of humanity's earliest mind-altering plants. And that may explain why people kept returning to it for thousands of years. Over thousands of years, tobacco spread across the Americas. Different groups began using the plant in different ways. For many communities, tobacco became something special. It wasn't viewed as an ordinary plant. Instead, it often played an important role in ceremonies. Some believe tobacco connected people to the spiritual world. Smoke carried prayers and messages into the sky. Tobacco was also exchanged between communities. The plant became part of trade networks stretching across large distances. By now, tobacco had become deeply woven into many cultures. Eventually, archaeologists found something even more exciting than tobacco seeds. They discovered ancient smoking pipes. Unlike seeds, pipes provide direct evidence of smoking. These weren't ordinary objects. Someone intentionally created them for inhaling smoke. That tells us smoking had become an established practice. But archaeologists wanted stronger proof, so they looked inside the pipes themselves. What they found was remarkable. Chemical analysis revealed traces of nicotine. For many ancient communities, smoking wasn't simply a habit. It often carried deep cultural meaning. Smoking could be part of important ceremonies. People didn't always smoke for pleasure. Many believed tobacco connected the physical and spiritual worlds. Smoke was sometimes viewed as a messenger. Prayers were believed to travel with it. Tobacco also played a role in healing traditions. Knowledge about tobacco was passed from generation to generation. By this point, tobacco had become woven into daily life. One of the earliest artistic depictions of tobacco smoking comes from the Maya. The Maya civilization flourished in Central America. Their cities were among the most impressive in the ancient world, and tobacco appears repeatedly in their artwork. This tells us smoking was already a well-established tradition. By this point, people had likely been using tobacco for thousands of years. Some forms of ancient tobacco were much stronger than those commonly used today. The experience may have been far more intense than modern smokers expect. Tobacco was not just consumed, it was respected. For many cultures, the plant held a significance far beyond recreation. But here's an even bigger question. Did smoking begin with tobacco? Or were humans experimenting with smoke long before tobacco entered the story? Humans have lived with fire for hundreds of thousands of years. Fire transformed the way our ancestors lived. Every day, people sat beside smoke-filled campfires. They would have noticed that different plants produced different kinds of smoke. Some plants smelled pleasant when burned. Others may have produced unusual effects. This may have been the beginning of humanity's long relationship with smoking. At some point, experimentation became tradition. People began repeating behaviors that seemed important. What worked once was often repeated again. Over generations, those behaviors became customs. Customs slowly became rituals, and rituals helped strengthen communities. Shared traditions brought people together. The act of smoking became more than an individual experience. It became part of a shared cultural identity. By now, smoking had become deeply rooted in many societies across the Americas. Everything changed when Europeans arrived in the Americas. When explorers arrived, they encountered something unfamiliar. They saw people smoking tobacco. For many Europeans, it was their first time seeing the practice. Some observers carefully recorded what they witnessed. News of tobacco quickly spread back across the Atlantic. A plant that had been used in the Americas for thousands of years was suddenly traveling overseas. Europeans became fascinated by tobacco. Many believed it had remarkable properties. Within a surprisingly short time, tobacco began spreading throughout Europe. The spread of tobacco was incredibly rapid. Within decades, tobacco was appearing in countries far from its homeland. Merchants quickly recognized its value. Ships carried tobacco across oceans. Soon, tobacco could be found in ports throughout Europe. People from many different cultures began experimenting with it. Some viewed tobacco as medicine, others saw it as a luxury. Demand continued to grow. What began as a regional tradition was becoming a global habit. So what does all of this evidence tell us? The oldest tobacco evidence dates back more than 12,000 years. Those seeds were discovered beside an ancient campfire. But seeds alone don't prove smoking. The strongest evidence comes from ancient pipes. Scientists even found traces of nicotine inside some of them. That tells us people were definitely smoking tobacco thousands of years ago. The exact beginning, however, remains a mystery. The first person to ever smoke tobacco has been lost to history. We may never know who that person was. What we do know is that tobacco has been part of human history for an incredibly long time. Long before cities existed. Long before the pyramids were built. And long before recorded history began. Ancient humans were already experimenting with the natural world around them, searching for food, searching for medicine, and sometimes searching for something more. Perhaps that's what first drew people to tobacco. A simple plant with unusual effects. A plant that would eventually spread across the world. And a plant whose story stretches back over 12,000 years. So, when did ancient humans start smoking? The honest answer is that we don't know exactly. But the evidence suggests the story began at least 12,300 years ago. What ancient mystery should we explore next?